Okay, so let's try this unit conversion problem. How many square yards are in 5.0 square miles? Okay, so let's first think about what is a square yard. A square yard is a unit of area, right? It's the amount of area taken up by a square where each side of the square is given by 1 yard. Okay, so you can, I'm sure, picture a square yard. Now what about 5 square miles? Well, that's a much bigger area. It's the amount of area taken up by a square where both sides of the square are given by 5.0 miles. Okay, so this question is asking how many times can we fit one of these little red boxes inside this blue box, right? And obviously I haven't drawn this to scale. You can fit a lot of square yards in 5 square miles, right? 5 square miles is a really big area. Okay, so if you're given this type of problem on a physics test or in some other class, you would likely be given a unit conversion factor of some kind. So let me give that to you. There are 1,760 yards in 1 mile. Okay. And you'll note here, I didn't give you a unit conversion for area, I gave you a unit conversion for length. Right? And that's the trick in this problem. In this type of problem, you're often given a length conversion factor, and you need to turn that into an area conversion factor. So we're going to be careful with that. But first, let's just think about how do we use this conversion factor in general. In general, what we want to do is turn this into a ratio. So in this case, I'm going to divide both sides of this equation by 1 mile. All right, so when I do that, I have 1,760 yards divided by 1 mile is equal to 1 mile divided by 1 mile, or just 1. Okay, and so I turn this conversion factor into a ratio, which is equal to 1. And when you have something that's equal to 1, you can multiply it by any other number and not really change it. Right? So that's what we're going to do in this problem. So let's write down our actual measurement we want to convert. We want to convert 5.0 square miles, or miles squared, right, if we're using that type of notation. And now I want to multiply this by our ratio. Right? But you'll notice that our ratio has miles in the denominator, and we need miles squared in the denominator, right? So that the miles squared cancels out. So I'm going to multiply this by 1, in that I'm multiplying it by 1,760 yards divided by 1 mile. But I need to square this whole quantity. So that's the big trick to solving this problem. I need to square this quantity such that I can cancel my miles squared with the miles squared I have in this ratio, which I've squared. Okay? That's the trick to this problem. Once I do this, I can just do the math. 5.0 times 1,760 squared, and I get 1.5488 times 10 to the 7th, and I end up with units of yards squared. Right, that's all I'm left with. Let me highlight that here. I have yards squared. That's the only unit I have at the end of this problem. So that's what I want. I've converted my square miles into square yards. But now I'm not totally done because I haven't thought about sig figs. Right? In the problem, they gave me a measurement with 2 sig figs, right? 5.0 square miles, that's 2 sig figs. So that is kind of telling us that when whoever measured this area, they measured each side of the square with 2 sig figs of precision, right? They measured it with a tenth of a mile precision, meaning they could have measured 5.1 or 5.0, but they couldn't have told us it's 5.01 miles, right? So they, in telling us 5.0 square miles, they're communicating to us some amount of precision. So since they gave us 2 sig figs in the problem, we need to report our answer also as 2 sig figs. So I note here that I have 1.5488 times 10 to the 7, and if I round this, well, this is just barely below the point where I need to round down. So this ends up being 1.5 times 10 to the 7th yards squared. Okay, so that's our answer. That's how many square yards there are in this 5 square miles.